Hello everyone, this is the third tutorial on WxPython. So just to recap, we installed Java, then installed Eclipse, then PyDay plugin was installed for Eclipse, then we installed Python. We are using Anaconda. So if you're a serious Python programmer, go for Anaconda Community Edition, which is free for commercial use, and then WX widgets 3.1.1 only for documentation purposes. And this is very useful for especially people who want to write their own packages for WxPython, write in WX widgets, C++, write a C Python wrapper and just do it in Python. That is for extreme programmers, but this tutorial is only for pure Python programming, which is WxPython. So this is the first statement for accessing WxPython. So let's see what PyDay package will provide using Eclipse on WxPython. So if you type wx dot, which is object oriented, so you get all the methods and their parameter functions and their parameter variables are available for the entire WX package. So let's see which version we have actually installed. So what we can do is we can come to this Python working. So let's say print WxPython version equals comma wx dot version. So here on the top you have to put pass, because I'm not using anything there is no initialization variables available right now. You can always call print function here, so you can call self. So as you can see in Python, SEL self represents the local variable for the entire class of that class object. So self dot, you get the function which is actually the print dot this. So as you can see, there is a default variable that is passed to this print function called print this, is known as self. The self represents the keyword that is useful for accessing all the local variables and function using this keyword called self. So if we don't declare with self dot, I will cover slightly basics on the variables in the future. So I'm calling the print function which is known as print called this, using the keyword called self does print this. So in the main function I don't have to call explicitly print app dot print this, because print this is calling the init function. So the init function is the constructor for the class in Python. So let's see what it prints out. So you can actually go for autosave function of the autosave function of this PyDev in the Eclipse, so that if you edit and directly press the run button here, it actually runs, which actually saves and then runs the Python file, or save all the Python files which is not saved by the user, which is Control S keyboard shortcut. So as you people can see, the WxPython is working, which is actually the first line, and the second line we are saying to the print function, print the WX version. So WX version as printed as 4.0.1, which is actually the Phoenix version of the WxPython, which is the latest, and the MSW we are using Microsoft Windows version, because I'm using Microsoft Windows 10 operating system. So as people can see, this init function is the constructor. I am not calling the print this function at all. I've just created the proj class 1 instance in the variable called app. So as soon as the main function start executing, the proj class object has been created and initialized and passed on to app, and the init function will be called, which is the constructor. The constructor is calling the print this function. So the print this function will print whatever the print function was provided in the print this function. print this problem. The keyword called def is the definition, which stands for a shortcut for the word called definition, which is the same as calling this is the function. So anything other than it in the class is actually the user defined function, and this is the keyword that is used which says this is the constructor. So please bear in mind the constructor. So a constructor will be useful for calling some default function, initialize all the variables, first create the variable, initialize the variable, and call any initialization function which needs to be running as soon as the class instance has been created, object has been created and passed on to the variable, like here, like broadcast to the app. So as people can see, there is a we are using the 4.0.1 Phoenix version of WxPython. This is the latest available right now as of May 2018. So as people can see, the Windows version, the WX widgets is actually working. So to access any WX related library, so just put WX dot. So in the next episodes of the tutorial, we'll cover directly the WX widgets. So this tutorial episode is just for covering some basic Python object-oriented constructs. So you can directly call the function in the init function, which is the initialization. So let's create some variable. So let's not create this variable. So let's if you type self dot, it means that variable let's not use the keyword called Python. This is var1 equals 100 self dot so I have created two variables with the keyword called self dot. Any variable created with the keyword called self, it means that variable is visible the entire class. The class is up to this, the entire class. So I'll put some comment. So in Python, the comment is actually the hash variable, and multi-line comments is actually with the three single quote. So this is the multi-line action. This is the multi-line comment. So just created Python function. So now here I have to call print this, otherwise it won't call this function from this class object. So this is a multi-line comment, and this is a string with the double quote. You can always do single quote also. Python supports both single quote and double quote for a string. This is actually the integer variable. The var1 is actually integer and var2 is a string. So how do you know that? Just look at the right hand side of the equal sign. So this is integer and this is float. So let's say self.var11 equals. So var11 is actually a float, or usually it represents in the double format, and this will be going to the long format. Long format is actually double the size of the integer, and double the size of the float when it comes to saving. So my system is, we are actually using Python 32-bit. So for integer 32 bits are used, for a long 64 bits will be used, and for a double 64-bit 32-bit representation will be used, and no, float will be using 32-bit and double will be using 64-bit, because we are running Python 32-bit here. if you run Python 64-bit, then integer will take 64 bits long, and long will take 128 bits, and in the float will take 64 bits, and double will take 128 bits. So just for people who are more math oriented, for example, you can actually embed my matplotlib into WxPython and do lot of uh, math science engineering kind of a application development. For example, the more world famous MATLAB is there, matrix laboratory. MATLAB, you can produce a MATLAB clone using WxPython, matplotlib, and then SciPy, NumPy, and we can develop a MATLAB clone or even Mathematica clone using these things. These all things are free. I'll try to correct to provide some episodes based on for matplotlib embedded inside WxPython. That is mostly the end of the tutorials. Okay, so I have created 3 variables. Let me rename it for proper sequence. So var1 is actually the integer. This is actually the float because I have a dot, and this is a string. So if you want to really print this, so I'll define another print vars. I'll create another function called print vars. So we have print var1 equals. So if you write self dot, so as you can see, all var1, var2, var3 variables are available because it is declared with the keyword called self and then dot. If there is no self, so I have removed the self for var1, you can't see the var1 with the self variable. So there is no var1 here because the var1 is only local to the init function. So if we declare var1 and print this, that var1 is only visible, meaning the scope. The scope of var1 here is only for init function. It's not visible anywhere if you use the self function. So if you want to print var1, meaning I want to see the default variable because it has been initialized, so I have to write the print function in the init function because var1, see, as you can see, the var1 is actually visible only in the init function because there is no self keyword. So I've just copy paste and do, it's already here. So if you do in a print vars, I can only see var2 and var3 because var2 has been declared with the self keyword. So I'll just copy paste. So coming to display, so print dot, so I have print vars, so I'll print vars, then I will run the program. So var value is 100, that var is only visible in the init function, so I have to do the printing in the init function. So because I have declared var2 with the keyword called self and dot, the dot is for object oriented purposes. So var2 is visible in the entire proj class 1. So it is visible in the print vars, which is outside the scope of init function. Because there is a keyword of self, so I can actually access those variables in any function inside the proj class 1, including the init function, because it has a keyword called self. So this is a very basic object oriented example for Python. So this is the same for Python 2.7 or Python 3 plus 3.6.3 what we are using now. Only difference typically is the curved brackets. So just be careful when you're using 2.7. I might end up using slightly different object oriented style, which might cause some minor issues using 2.7, but I'll be using very generic Python programming style so that it works both on 2.7 and 3.6. but just be sure, but 2.7 will not have print. For 2.7 it is just print. So this is 2.7. This is Python 2.7, this is Python 3.6 or Python 3, and this is Python 2. So See, it doesn't print. This doesn't get printed like this in a Python 3. Okay, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me and watching this episode. Stay tuned for the additional episodes that is coming later in time. Thanks a lot. Bye.